Well, there you go, that's just typical. I thought I'd hit record, pitched the Enan, and I hadn't hit record. Anyway, there's one pitched Enan. It is very quick and easy, and you know, and very efficient to do. It's a really nice shelter, the Enan. You've got big vents there, or a big vent there, and then at the other end, you know, another big vent there. Let's open the door. The material is much lighter than the Akto, and I think it's a little bit smaller inside. I would say I do think it is. I think it is a little bit smaller in here. In a nutshell, the Enan is pretty much the same size as the Akto. The only real difference is that obviously, you know, the material comes down to two front posts there, so giving the impression and the feel of a bigger tent on the Akto, because obviously here it all comes down to a point, but the actual porch space is pretty much the same. The internal width is pretty much the same. The length, I'm sure, will be the same, and as I say, the width across the bottom is the same. Maybe there's an inch in it, I know, I mean, I'm not going to get within millimeters, but it's pretty much the same. It really is just the feeling of space there. But then you've got a 1 kilogram tent and about a 1.8 kilogram tent. We'll pitch the Soulo, probably over there, and then we'll do a few basic measurements of that, and then we'll just have a look around all three and have a see as to which I would, you know, recommend that you buy. Right, so you first pitch out your four corners, and you have to make sure, just in case, that your black line here, it has to be underneath. A couple of other things, just to, because I've pitched this once at Cheddar, and first of all, obviously make sure all your lines are free. Make sure that black line is underneath, that cord thing. Make sure all lines are free. Right, yeah, what I wanted to say, one thing I learned last time is just make sure that these bits here are spread out, so that when you put that pole in last, it's not up here, it's out here. It just means that it has less to bend when you're pitching it. It is worth noting, because when I was pitching last time, it was quite close together and the poles did not break, so they definitely have a lot of spring in them. But I did think, wow, this is quite a U shape. And then I realised that it, you know, if I'd have spread them apart a little bit more, it wouldn't have been quite so extreme. So these two and correct me if I'm wrong, although I've probably done one error here, haven't I, all you experts? I hadn't noticed that before. You've got I knew the colour thing, but oh no, it's oh no, it does go in there like that, goes up there. That's interesting. We're kind of experimenting as we go, because it would also fit just in there or up there, depending on where you want to do it. I don't know why. Is there a reason for that, or have they just not sewn that in? Interesting. And then this side, obviously put this pole in here. Don't bend them too much, you don't want to over flex them, but that seems pretty decent there. I must admit, I am amazed. I am always amazed at how much you can bend these things though. This one here, this is the one that really gets me nervous, because it's how the hell that doesn't break. That still gets me nervous, doing that one. That is such a bend on that, but it's fine. It didn't break last time, it hasn't broken this time, and it hasn't broken on the many millions of times. Okay, so the door is over there. We did double check on that. The door is this side here, away from the wind. And then what they recommend is that you go around building it up bit by bit. Like that, so you're not building any one bit up, although I think as long as the weather's okay, I think if it was blowing an absolute gale, you might want to do it bit by bit, but the weather's good, so, and I can't be bothered to walk all the way around every time. It does tighten up, and there we have one of poor Messner's favourite freestanding tents. I mean, I don't mean this tent, I mean a freestanding tent. That's it. This pitch is really simply so we can show you this tent. Because we're not pitching it fully, we're not going to wrap these around here, but they do recommend wrap them around that pole. If you take 4 or 6 extra pegs, because I believe it comes with 12, but if you take an extra 6 pegs, then each one of these other lines you could pitch them, you know, independently. I think just for ease, I'm going to put those there so we can get to it, and then get the roof on, And again, I have to say, like the Enan, that is quick and easy enough to pitch. Open the door. Obviously, one interesting thing with this is the door opens this side. Basically, I'm going to sit in each of these tents and, you know, just get a feeling for sitting in the tent. So in here, my head is touching the top. There's quite a bit of room, but because of the triangular shape, obviously it closes in on you, you know. So if you like quite a bit of space, then obviously, you know, you do lose a little bit in here. But generally, where it matters, which is this bit here in the Enan, have enough space. The porch is pretty much exactly the same size as the Akto. I really don't think there's very much in these two. The inner in this little breeze does come in more than the Akto, from what I can tell. Don't forget to like, subscribe, share, hit that notification button. So we'll sit in the middle. Head is pretty much the same. I think the porch is generally the same. The porch feels a little bit bigger than the Enan, but I really don't think there's a huge amount in it. When you look at the back, because of the rectangular thing at the end, we'll go and have another look at the Enan. It generally feels, with the same breeze that's going on, I think because there's two poles at the back, and then it's pulling on, and then those cords are pulling on both of them, it does feel, you know, a bit more sturdy. And, you know, you could definitely say that you've got more, you know, livable space in here, because obviously the you know, the shape of it and everything. So it feels larger when the ground space is the same size, pretty much. Let's go back to the Enan. Yeah, I mean, there's really not much in the back, is there? Because you still kind of goes across there. There really isn't very much in the porches. I think they're very similar, to be fair. I really don't think there's much in it. Head is pretty much the same. Like I said, the only real difference is, I think, because of the design, you know, in exactly the same breeze, you know, the material is moving more than in the Akto. One other thing, because I always sleep with my head back there, this side, leaning this side, I actually also like that side there is covered, because then all the bits that I'm using is kind of near me, and then I can kind of get in and out here, so that's kind of useful. And of course you have the same with that one there. A few interesting things about this. First of all, you do get a lot more headroom. So if you're a very tall person, then I could understand that the Soulo would definitely be worth considering, because you do get a lot more height, you know, above your head. Interestingly, the width of the front and the back appears to be narrower than the Enan and the Akto. Not by very much, but when I measure them, they do seem just, you know, a little bit smaller. The, you know, the widths at the end. The width of the inner here in the middle is about the same. The width of the porch space is less in here than in the Enan and the Akto. So the porch in those two is bigger. Also, I noticed that when you look down there, it kind of goes straight in, so there's not that little bit like that. You know, if porch space is very important to you, then I think the other two have slightly bigger porches. I still think you can do your cooking and all of that, you know, here safely enough, but obviously just be mindful that it is a little bit smaller in here, but it's still adequate. I think for me, if I was choosing one of the three tents, first of all, I probably wouldn't be camping on the top of a mountain, and I probably wouldn't be camping somewhere where, you know, where the weather would be really bad, where you need the Soulo. This is an incredibly popular tent. Personally, I definitely would not myself get one of these. 2-3 years time, look what I've got. I just don't see this as a tent that I would get. It's kind of like your lack of ventilation disturbs me. There really isn't any ventilation in here. You get this one panel up here, so check out my video in Cheddar a week ago, and I show you and explain a few thoughts on, you know, using the vent up here, using the vent up there, and you know, clearly it's probably adequate, but you literally only get a vent up here and that's it. You really don't get any other vents at all. I do like this really big open door here, and as I said in that video, I would keep this open all the time. Unless it's snowing and snow's getting in, I can see no reason ever for doing this up in here. Okay, I guess if you're in Scotland and there are midges or bugs, then maybe you would need to then. But generally speaking, I can see no reason why you would ever need to do these up. And I think having this open like this, you know, would be very helpful. You've got little gaps underneath. Leave the door open whenever you possibly can, and that would help. So to my mind, this would be a really good shelter for a tall person, taller than my 5'8", 173 centimeters. You know, and obviously if you're going to be camping on the top of a windswept mountain, well, first of all, you probably need your head examined. But you know, quite clearly it is a very strong, sturdy tent. But is it worth 2.4 kilograms? Personally, I would rather carry 2.4 8 kilograms and take the Namaj 2, because you get a lot more space inside. Your porch is going to be, you know, bigger. And yes, it's not going to be as strong as this, clearly, because it's a tunnel tent. But I'd rather, you know, if I'm carrying this weight, which is why I bought the Namaj 2 and I didn't get one of these, you know, because if I'm going to carry that extra weight, I think I'd rather carry the weight for, you know, for space. Let's go and have another look at the other two. So just as I start thinking about moving, then you decide to come in and say hello. Oh, Lizzie. Every time I see her little head, it always reminds me of Basil, you know, Basil the rat, when that little rat's head pops up in that box of biscuits. Your little head always reminds me of Basil the rat. The little head pops up. So that's my thoughts on this. I think it's and I mean this in the nicest possible way, and I know I'm going to upset all the people that love this shelter, but to my mind it's a one-trick pony. You know, it's really designed for really, really bad weather, and realistically, you know, we should be pitching in better places, more sheltered places, than, you know, on top of a mountain where you need this. And for 2.4, you know, odd kilograms, it just seems a hell of a lot of weight, you know, to be carrying for a fairly small space. It's just my thoughts, you know, for what it's worth. And I know some of my friends like this tent as well. You know, I'm just seeing it how I see it. We go from that quite spacious, you know, quite clearly there is an immediate more claustrophobic feeling in here, but the porch does seem a little bit bigger. I think I do prefer having the door here, because then when I'm lying here I can look out the door. I'll have a look, go back over there and see what that's like. Obviously if you lie on this side, then you might very well, you know, feel differently. It's definitely less sturdy, that is for sure. The venting on this is just massive. You just have this huge rectangular vent there, and basically back there's that cover, so you can take that cover down and then either have that vent, you know, fully open or fully closed. It's a very manual type of thing to do. Here you can see the grass straight through because the vent is, you know, completely open there. So you've got, you know, oodles of air flowing through there, whereas clearly there is none there. You know, you've this big zip thing here. I don't really know why people complain so much about condensation in the Enan and the Akto. Really don't get it, because, you know, that's a massive vent there, and again, you know, unless the wind and, you know, unless the rain is really hammering it through there, you just really don't need to do those vents up. And you certainly wouldn't need to do the downwind vent up, and the upwind vent you could probably just do it up halfway or something. You know, you probably wouldn't even need it done up the whole way. So I really don't know. I mean, I've used that in very damp conditions, and I've used that in very damp conditions, and I've never had a problem with condensation in either of them. It's just never been a problem. So I really don't understand why so many people, you know, find it an issue. They've all got reasonable porches. I do think the Soulo has a smaller porch, but not by much. It's still decent enough. When you look at these, it is just wider, you know, across there, and the same there. It's kind of, you know, wider across there. And then when you look at this one, it is just narrower. Just generally it's narrower that way. It's not as wide at the foot end. You know, the foot end looks narrower. That middle pole, I don't know why, but that middle pole always is giving me the heebie-jeebies now, that it's so U-shaped that it's going to break at any point, although clearly it's not going to. But it is much narrower and taller than this one, and of course this one. Now you could say that this is 1 kilogram, so for an extra 800 grams you could have that one with a little bit more internal space. For another 800, well, for another 600 grams I raise you this one, and I really just don't think that that is worth, you know, for the average camp, 1.5. So that's 1 kilogram, and that's 1.5 kilograms heavier than this. And you can see, I don't know how breezy this is. This is probably about, I don't know, 15 mile an hour. This isn't exactly hurricane force or anything like that. But I really just don't see the point of carrying that for most of what we do. That or this, to me, makes more sense. You've got more space, you've got a wider foot end, you've got the tent wider, it's a bit lower, so it's not going to catch as much wind because they're both a little bit lower, and you know, they're both sturdy enough. Clearly this one is moving in a little bit more because again you've only got one pole at the back, rather than obviously here you've got 2 there, so that's not blowing as much, and you know, clearly that's not blowing at all. I don't know which I would choose if I could only choose one of these. You know, if I was only choosing one, I'd probably go with the Enan, because whilst I think if you want something in the middle, then I think the Akto would be a really good option. I think it's plenty sturdy enough for most of what we're going to do when we don't need that sturdiness, and to be fair, I think that's more than sturdy for most people's uses. You've got better ventilation, you've got a better porch, so if people are looking at that or that makes more sense to me. At least 600 grams lighter than that. That's your sleeping bag, that's your bed, you know, whatever. 600 grams is quite a bit. If you're only going out for a night and you're not going far and you're taking 10 beers with you anyway, well then, you know, you're probably going to get that. But that makes more sense than that, to me, to my mind. The Akto makes more sense than the Soulo. The Enan, in many ways, makes more sense than the Akto, because it's 800 grams lighter, give or take a bit. Got the same ground space, you've got the same excellent ventilation on it, And if anyone challenges me on the venting on this or this, I'll take up that challenge, because I think these both have got excellent venting. The whole front panel and the whole back panel on this and that is a huge freaking vent. It's low to the ground. Again, if you're very tall, maybe get the Soulo. And if you're very tall, then you're probably strong enough that you can carry it everywhere. So, you know, there is that. But if you're not, you know, if you're not Jeff Capes, probably showing my age there, then this, out of that and that, this makes the most sense. It's about 1 kilogram. You've got plenty of space inside. If you're going somewhere for a night or two, and especially as you start to get, you know, a little bit older, you know, your knees are starting to go a bit. Do you want to carry 1 kilogram? Do you want to carry 1.8 kilograms? Or do you want to carry 2.4 kilograms? 1 kilogram seems much more sensible to me. It is a lighter tent. You know, the material is lighter, so, you know, clearly I probably wouldn't be, you know, pitching it in a very, 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 very exposed place. But I'm very, very sure, knowing Hilleberg quality and everything else like this, that this will stand up to a jolly good thrashing without any problem at all. I do wish that they would just make the door somehow, particularly this side where I sleep, just down that way a little bit more. That would be a preference, you know, for me. Obviously they're trying to save weight on zip and everything else like that, but I really don't think a zip going down there would really make much of a difference in, you know, in weight. But if you're looking for a Hilleberg tent, and, you know, and of these three you're kind of wondering which one to get, then, you know, to my mind anyway, for the weight, the space, and this is ridiculous. Well, they're all very easy to pitch, but this just makes the most sense. You know, a big thanks to Chris Townsend, because this is Chris's, the Soulo is Chris's, the Akto is mine. Until Chris asks for this back, I'm gonna forget. I'm gonna forget whose it is. The Soulo I'll be sending back, because I know he'll be wanting that. He'll be wanting that for the next winter. And I realistically just don't think I'd use it much, if at all, anyway. I've just got other things that I would prefer to use than that. This, if Chris ever wanted this back and I couldn't borrow it back again, I have to say, this I would be more tempted to actually get one of these for myself, but hopefully he kind of forgets. Hopefully he forgets that I'm borrowing it. I really do like the Enan. I just think for a solo single tent, I think it's a very, very nice shelter. Like I said, it's not as spacious inside as the Akto. I do think that the Akto is slightly more livable in. You know, now I'm in the here, I will say that this is a more livable area to the Enan. But I think if I'm having to carry it somewhere, and I'm not being a lazy bugger like I am, and like, you know, staying in camp for hours on end, I'd rather save 600 to 800 grams and take the Enan, because again, that 600 to 800 grams basically is your airbed, you know, is your quilt, you know, whatever. It's the weight of something quite important that's going to add up. And you still have, obviously I'm on the mat here, but my mat, you know, my backside is bottoming out on it. But you know, so yeah, there is, you do lose that kind of feeling of space in here when you're in the Enan, but it's still, I would still go with the Enan from the point of view of weight. You know, again, if you're a tall person, you know, and you've got broad shoulders, you know, I mean, I'm not exactly the biggest of people, you may want this, you know, if you are a broad-shouldered, you know, then, you know, this might suit you better. You know, I think if you're, you know, you're not that huge. So there's a few thoughts and such like. I'm not going to go into all the intricate details. There's a million videos on that. I just think it's worth my while just doing this funny little thing, showing you around these 3 shelters and just sort of waffling away, you know, about them. I will say, having been in both of those, then when you come into here, there is definitely a feeling of space in here. So again, I would still be choosing the Enan, but I think because the way that it's designed, there is a feeling of space in here. Again, for the weight, I would still be going for the Namash 2, because I think if I'm carrying 2.4 kilograms, which is already quite a lot, I'd rather be carrying an extra 400 grams for more space, because the only place where there's space in here is extra is this space here. The ground space is the same as in the other two, if not even a margin or less, because it's narrower and the porch is smaller. So even though there's a feelings of more space, it's because obviously it's up here. So if you've got a big head, then you know, you might like this, you know, for a feeling of space. I can sit up, and then I've got quite a bit of space around me here. It is quite spacious, I have to say. It is quite spacious in here. This is the Akto. Yep. Again, you've got quite a lot of space around the foot area and to the side. I think it's a little bit more spacious, you know, ground level in that one, but there's not a huge amount, you know, in it. Oh, for me. So where we're going to sleep tonight is in here, and then we can get, you know, a little bit more of a feeling. Again, because of the triangular thing at the foot and back end, you know, it does feel around your head area, you know, a little bit smaller, but I have to say the ground area is very spacious. You know, I can lie down here, and you know, the material is more around my head here. Again, that's just because of the shape of it. You know, when you're sleeping and your head's lower down, you know, I don't think it's going to be so much of a problem. Maybe, you know, maybe a bit for some. Like I said, I'm not saying get this and don't get those. I'm showing you how I feel and what it looks like, and then it's up to you. Some of you might not get anything. You might just watch at home for the sheer fun of it. The material here, I can hear in the breeze, it's a little bit more like papery, plasticky. I mean, obviously it's nylon, obviously, but because it's thinner, you know, it feels more flimsy in the wind. But this evening is going to be breezier than last night, and almost as breezy as tomorrow night. Not a huge amount in it, so that will kind of be interesting. So, you know, I've put this in here. I'm going to use this shelter this evening, and we'll see how we get on. I think the line at the end is a bit skew-iff, so I think I might just straighten that up a little. But I think this is perfectly adequate. I just think you're better off saving weight and pitching sensibly, because if you're pitching where you need the Soulo, generally speaking, you're probably going to be in such an exposed, windy location that you're probably not really going to sleep very much. And you might be better off saving 1.5 kilograms almost, maybe not quite, but almost that, and having this, using this, you know, that's your sleeping bag, that's your mat, you know, at least that's your sleeping bag and your mat covered, I know, as a minimum, before you even start. When you really think about it, you know, 1.5 kilograms, well, unless you've got a very heavy sleeping bag, that's your sleeping bag and your mat covered easily, you know, for 1.5 kilograms. So yes, I do like the space in the other two. I like the space in them a lot. I just think for getting out, walking, I think you're more likely to walk more and further saving 1 to 1.5 kilograms. Obviously make sure you get your MLD stuff first and all that. Obviously, yeah, you got to get your MLD stuff first, haven't you? Yeah, you got to get your MLD stuff first. And obviously they're even lighter and even better, obviously. But we're just talking about these 3 shelters here, aren't we? Yeah, we are, aren't we? Oh, thank you. I always wanted kisses. I always wanted kisses. As always, thank you very much for watching. If you got this far, you're probably already subscribed anyway. But if you're not, please just make sure that you are subscribed, you know, and hit the notification button and like the video.